Mm-hmm.
We all have that traumatic memory burned into our brain. All right.
It wasn't so traumatic.
Oh, it was traumatic. All right, so we are live. We're fixing to go for it.
It would have been for the spot. It would have been fine.
Would have been for the half-gallon of Earl on the carpet.
Earl.
That's right. Dang it, Earl.
I just can't get enough of you, Earl.
Dang it, Earl. My finger.
My dang pinky finger. Really? A personal check?
That dude was hilarious. I can't remember his name, but man, what a character. All right. So here we are, episode 27.
So today's show, we're going to circle back around to those tough conversations that we talked about on last week's show. And we're going to give you a couple of key ways that those tough conversations can actually strengthen the relationships of the key players you're involved with. You found the K-Cup. Let's jump in.
Hey, welcome back to the K-Cup, episode 27. This week we're gonna jump back into this conversation that we had last week in episode 26 about difficult client conversations. Last week we talked about the high cost of not having those difficult client conversations when you need to, the high cost of your reputation, how you can lose respect. And then at the same time, we talked about, how it can affect your bottom line to the point where it actually threatens your ability to keep your doors open in your business. But this week we wanted to return and touch on one more point connected to this, difficult client conversation subject, and that being of how to turn these difficult client conversations into real relationship strengtheners. So we're going to talk about how proper communication actually builds trust and can help develop long-term partnerships with clients instead of, everybody leaving the project with a bad taste in their mouth. They can actually turn this into a situation where both parties are willing to do business with each other for years to come. So welcome back, John. Obviously, we want to tap into your experience again this week discussing difficult client conversations. We know last week we talked about some real world situations that are common in the construction industry that you're just going to face, and probably in a lot of businesses, but we probably have them more frequent opportunities in construction because there's so many moving pieces. And but we also know that over the years, and I've witnessed this myself, we've been able to turn some of these difficult situations into actual, relationship builders, to where we still do business with some of those clients today that we, during projects in the past, we just had some challenges that had to be overcome. But we did that through transparency, through honesty, being truthful. So let's talk about that, because this really kind of puts a positive spin on the difficult conversation thing, and it leaves things in a positive light. So let's talk about the advantage of being transparent from the get-go with the project. Share some thoughts with us about that.
Yeah, so you just used the word truthful. A lot of times being transparent means telling the truth. And, if you tell the truth early and often, it's always going to serve you well.
That's right.
And, transparency is not just about truth, but that's a big part of it. So being truthful all the time, it's always going to serve you well. And we've seen that time and time again. But then there's other times that just, transparency is not always about trying to hide the truth. There's just certain facts that sometimes aren't easy to talk about. And this is what this whole, podcast has been about.
Yeah.
But being transparent and being truthful and sharing, key information, whether it's good or bad, is always going to serve you well when you get it out early and get it out, ahead of the issue, ahead of it being a huge problem.
For sure.
And we've talked about a number of different, problems, if you will, or tough conversations. I mean, if a project's going to be late, that's always a tough conversation.
Yeah.
If there's, cost that, wasn't intended to be, that's always going to be a difficult conversation.
For sure.
Just anytime something's not going exactly to plan, there's always going to be a tough conversation around it.
That's right.
But if you get out in front of it, and if you get that out in the open early, it's always going to serve you well. And I can think of a few instances. One, if we're dealing with somebody that's trying to move into a new space, and maybe they're leasing a space, they've purchased a building, for their own company or whatever. We know a few months in advance that we're not going to make the schedule. I mean, we need to get that information out there so that they can make plans for where they're at.
That's right.
And a lot of times it's going to be as simple as you kind of let them know there's some disappointment, but they may have a response. Look, we're month to month anyway. We can give our landlord a little bit of notice that we're going to need another month or two here.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a big issue. To where if we waited to the end to tell them that, and at this point maybe the space is leased and now they're kind of out of options.
Yeah.
Another one that I can think of that's really a big deal that you don't think about as often is the person that we're working with may actually not be the person. They may have a boss that they're answering to, or a higher up, and the quicker they could relay that information to their boss, it would look a lot better on them.
Exactly.
And they take that stuff serious because, obviously everybody's wanting to be the best employee, the best person you could be.
Sure.
Most people are looking to grow and move up the ladder.
Yeah.
And, that kind of could give somebody a black eye in a sense if they don't have this information until the end of the day. And that can really kind of tarnish the relationship. If that client, or if that's a person that we're working with that may have a lot of work, and all of a sudden we become a professional obstacle for them, then that's kind of a problem.
Exactly.
But if we can get them that information early, and they can share that information early, and it's, it goes over a lot better because they have time to prepare for that obstacle or whatever it is. The scenarios could be endless, but the point is they would have time to plan for that and not kind of blindside their leader or their higher up also. So that's just two quick examples that I can think of right off that we've kind of seen. We've worked with plenty of clients that are the end users, but time and time again, and I think that one is the more stressful, is when we're working with somebody who has to answer to somebody else. I think that's when it really can become a problem, more so than dealing with the end user. So just always important to know who you're working with and the circumstances surrounding those particular people. But at the end of the day, just transparency, honesty, getting that tough conversation stuff out there early. It's always going to serve you well, and it's the right move every time.
Yeah. I won't go into deep detail on this, but it does remind me of a project that we talked about a little bit yesterday. And that point that you made, the person who was running the project for the entity that we were performing for, wasn't the top dog. Although he was a very high placed individual in the organization, he answered to actual local politicians.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of pressure on him for this project to go well and stuff. And the project, because of its nature, did have some major challenges and some huge difficulties associated with it. And there was a lot of things that were just unknowns until we got into the project. And the building that we were working on was a very old building, and the part of the building that we were trying to utilize had been, was a concrete structure that had been poured back in the day. It was so long ago that they were still using, dimensional lumber as form boards back then. So it was a lot of, inconsistencies in the structure and stuff like that. So, but we were very diligent about keeping that person informed, and it really was challenging on our part because, Bobby and I constantly felt like we were having to disappoint this person with the news that we were getting from the subcontractors and vendors that we were working with on the project. But we also felt very strongly that we had to keep this person informed because we really had grown to like the person. We had developed a great relationship with him. And two, we didn't want him to be in the dark and do like what you say, have his superiors feel like, well, you don't even have your finger on the pulse of this thing. You're not keeping us informed.
Right.
And so, anyways, we just felt compelled to really, keep him informed of every twist and turn, and there were a lot of them. But like you said, at the end of the day, that transparency, that being truthful and honest, that goes a long way, even when there's problems.
Yeah, no, that's a great example of one that, it's key to keeping that person informed, because they're answering to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And that really puts a lot of pressure on them, which, pressure busts pipes, right? So anytime somebody's under that amount of pressure, a situation that's not a huge problem can become a huge problem. Specifically, if that information is not, not given early and not explained and just not given the right tools early on to be able to have that discussion with their higher ups or whatever.
That's right.
I mean, when we're talking with the person where the buck stops with them, it can be. There still can be a bad situation, but there's not near the pressure on that person because they make the call. They're not answering to anybody.
Exactly.
So that's a great example of exactly what I was talking about, actually.
Yeah.
Do you have a construction project, but you just don't know where to begin? Let us show you the steps that are necessary to make your project a reality. I'm John Kelly with Kelly Construction Group, and I wanted to jump in here for just a second and let you guys know that here at Kelly Construction, we're more than just a builder. We're your one-stop solution. We want to help you with planning, design, permitting, and construction. If this sounds like a solution you need, reach out to us today. We've left the links in the show notes. Set up a call. Now, let's get back to today's show.
So let's talk about this next point then about, this is another part of being able to turn difficult conversations into relationship builders instead of something that damages relationships. And this point that we're going to discuss now is really about technique, about how you approach difficult situations. And one example would be like you're in the middle of a project, and you get to a place where you discover that say for example the drawings just aren't accurate. They're just not. They look great on paper necessarily in this particular situation, but when you're out in the field and you're trying to apply it to the actual project, it's just not coming together, and you're seeing issues constantly that need to be looked at. That could turn into a situation where that you're losing productivity. You got guys on the job that are costing you pretty penny, and they're not being productive. They're not producing because the plans aren't clear. At that point, it could be very easy for someone just to get mad, lose their temper, and call up the architect or the engineer and just read them the riot act. Your drawings, they're costing me money. I want to be reimbursed. You're getting back charged for this and all that stuff. But we're talking about how can you take these difficult conversations and actually strengthen a relationship. So tell us a little bit about how the smart way to go about dealing with a situation like this, because this isn't really uncommon. In construction, we run into things all the time when it comes to drawings and applying them in the field. It's just the nature of the beast. It happens. But tell us how you might deal with this and where it can turn out with a good result instead of something bad.
I mean, when I think about that, I think the biggest thing in my mind is like, don't be so quick to point the blame. Don't be so quick to assign this problem to somebody.
Yeah.
Let's see what the problem is, and let's try to make it a team approach to solving this problem.
Yeah.
And even though even if it's not our problem, let's put ourselves in the middle of it with the architect in that instant that you talked about. Maybe the drawings aren't right, or there's something that's incorrect that's giving us heartburn. How can we jump into the middle of that problem with the architect, not just say, hey man, your drawings are wrong, this is a change order, this is whatever.
Yeah.
Like, let's approach it in a manner that, this is not going to work, but let's solve this as a team. Like, what can we do to have minimal cost? What can we do? Let's both give a little bit. Let's both find a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah.
Have a team approach to solving the problem instead of just pointing the finger and all of a sudden there's going to be, you know, all these additional calls due to that.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, that's for the case that you brought up. But there's a lot of scenarios, you know, that we can talk about. You know, maybe we missed a scope, maybe a subcontractor missed a scope. You know, how can we find a good solution? You know, specifically like subcontractors I mean, we want our subcontractors to be our partners. We want to be working with them on another job and another job. So,
yeah.
Is there a way that we can find a missed scope and you know, work it out between us where maybe they're not taking a full hit, or whatever the solution is, but just don't point it out and say, hey guys, you missed this scope. It's all yours. And sometimes that's the answer. And when it is, the subcontractor usually knows and it's not an issue. But if it's a gray area specifically, like, let's find some common ground. Let's see what we can do to work it out.
Yeah. Knowing
that we're going to be doing this for years to come and we're going to be partners and we're going to work it out. I mean, that's really our approach all the time.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that I would say, you know, in this portion is just don't be so quick to point the blame on somebody. Don't be so quick to say, hey, this is your problem.
Yeah.
And act like we're clear of it, even if we should be. I mean, I think that, you know, there's plenty of times where I feel like we should be completely clear of the problem, but we kind of find ourselves knee deep in it, just trying to help work it out, you know.
That's part of being a partner, is taking on some of that.
Yeah, and I think
that may not be yours.
I think that goes a long way. At the end of the day, wherever the fault lies, it usually ends up becoming apparent without us having to point it out or call it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And just that move right there causes way less heartache and way less pain.
Absolutely.
And usually that person's willing to take the brunt of the responsibility too in that instance when you haven't just gone out there and, you know, blasted them and said they were wrong and said they were whatever.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's what I would say is just don't be quick to point the blame. Be quicker to try to find a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
And everything else kind of works itself out.
Yeah. That reminds me of a meme I saw a while back, and it was on a post talking about assigning blame, like kind of what you're talking about, someone being quick to assign blame. And the meme said, you may be right 99% of the time, but you're still wrong 100% of the time. And the point is that in the act of demonstrating your rightness and you're not the one that made the mistake, you just destroyed the chance of, like you're saying, creating a partnership or a collaboration where you're going to find a solution and take care of it. So now, you might be right, but you still have the problem and no one's going to work with you to solve that problem. So it's kind of really an exercise in futility, proving that you're right. So
right.
Anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting. It kind of, you know, applies to what we're talking about right now. It's being right really doesn't have nothing to do with it. It's about finding a solution that everyone can work with and be successful in the end. And ultimately, and we never want to forget this point, ultimately it's the goal of everyone should be to deliver that project to the project owner because they're the one paying for it. So ultimately that should be our goal in all the different players, whether architects, engineers, contractors, subcontractors. We all should be willing to do what we have to do as a team to get that accomplished. So.
Right.
All right. So anyways, this has been pretty positive. Any closing points you want to make on this subject of, you know, creating partnerships through, you know, having these difficult conversations and doing it in a proper way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the tone of this podcast has been towards, you know, your owners or your architects or that kind of thing. But, you know, this transparency and this you know, I guess problem solving, not pointing the finger, that kind of goes against, you know, or goes for every aspect of the business. I mean, you know, this is for your subcontractors, this is for your vendors.
Sure.
I mean, this is actually for your own team members. You know, even within the company, that transparency and this you know, this approach to solving problems is going to serve you very well in all aspects of the business. So I think it's key to just have that transparency and that problem solving ability kind of across the board.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's a great culture to develop in your team. You know, that they approach their job having the understanding that your expectation of them is that they're going to be transparent and honest and truthful. So we can eliminate that as a layer of problem, which helps you get to the real problem quicker and fix it, So
Right.
it just uncomplicates things.
And then, like, basically how you started off is, solving the problems or having this communication, creating strong relationships. And that's exactly what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
I know within our company, we're all, very close knit, and we do have some tough conversations, and we do have hard conversations from time to time. But at the end of the day, it pulls us together, it makes us stronger.
That's right.
And, that's the same way it does with subcontractors and owners and all the people that we work with. So
Yeah.
really, really critical couple pieces to really strengthen some relationships.
That's right. All right. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up then. Appreciate you sharing your insight on these 2 points. Hopefully everyone listening today is getting some value out of this. We're going to call this part 2 of our difficult conversations, little mini series that we just kind of made impromptu, but we just felt compelled to come back and share this positive aspect, of having difficult client conversations and using them to build and strengthen relationships and show really another side of your ability as a player in this industry to be able to be a solution finder and not someone that causes problems for other people that do business with them. So anyways, hopefully you got some value out of this. Please come back and see us next week where we'll have some more great points to discuss and more value for you. But we would like you to subscribe to the podcast if you would. Subscriptions is what helps the podcast get pushed out to more people. And our goal really is to build a community around this industry, the commercial industry, which we know covers commercial real estate, commercial lending, architects, engineers, and contractors of all sorts, subcontractors, tradesmen, and general contractors. So help us out with that by just hitting that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up and come back and see us again. That's it. Adios.
That's all.
That's all she wrote.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.